Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. Today we're linking up with Dr. Jill Siler. She has been the Superintendent of Gunter ISD since 2012. Now, Jill, that's a long time to be a superintendent. That's a good tenure, I'm telling you. 8 years?
Well, thank you. And to be in one district, which has been wonderful to be in this community for this long.
Yes, I mean, a superintendent's tenure is usually much shorter than that, so kudos to you. She has her doctorate, and she had started her career as a teacher and a swim coach, and she launched her journey in Marble Falls ISD, where she served as a campus administrator, and then she worked in central office for 8 years. Her passion is helping others meet their goals, and she's been a frequent speaker at the First Time Superintendent Academy, which is wonderful to kind of put those people forward to become superintendents and our future leaders. She is also the chair of the Future Ready Superintendent Leadership Network. Is that for Texas?
It is for Texas. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's great to hear too. And she is a lead facilitator for the aspiring superintendents. Now, as well as being a superintendent and doing all of those things, she also wrote a book, which is called Thrive Through the Five. And I have been reading it, and I am loving it, Jill.
So your sticky notes.
Post-it notes. You're
I
like,
know. Yes, I am just really, really liking it. And it was released in September. I have a first question for you, because the book is just based in working through failure and fear and faith. Mm-hmm. Did you start writing this before the pandemic?
Way before the pandemic, right? Really? So, I tell people all the time, like, I love my job as a superintendent. I love my job 95% of the time. And people are like, that's incredible. Like, who loves it? And they're right. That is incredible. But there is this 5% that is so incredibly difficult that I just don't think that we talk about enough. And so I wrote this pre-pandemic. And the funny part about that was just, even in that space and season in my life, the concept is strong and it's there. But I'll also be honest that if there were, some seasons where I even got to a 75-25, we call it a win, right? So right. The 75-5 is like that's the best case scenario. But now launching it in the midst of COVID, let me just tell you, if I were to title it right now, it probably wouldn't be Thrive Through the 5. It might be like Thrive Through the 55 or Thrive Through the 75 on some days. It's been a challenging year.
That's right. But not a greater time to release this book, because as I read through it, I thought initially that maybe it was just for educators and educational leaders. But as I read through it, I could see applications to my personal life, and I could see applications for anyone to pick up this book and really be able to use some of the skills and the ideas that you have. So I think the timing was perfect for the release of the book. And I know that there are so many educators out there that are feeling like they're not thriving. They're working so hard and they're paddling so hard, but they're not thriving. What would you say to them, Jill, to help them just even take that first step to begin to thrive? What's your first recommendation?
Yeah. So I think that we all have seasons in our life, in work, and in our personal lives that are just really, really difficult. And I know for me, I kind of found myself, especially in a position of leadership, of just trying to get through those moments, just trying to, hope for those moments to pass, like just trying to survive that moment. And just got to a place where I was, we deserve more. Like, we owe it to ourselves and everyone around us to do more than just survive. I wanted to learn how to thrive. And so, in the book, I talk about just how to work through some of those underlying factors, like you talked about, the failure, the fear, the high expectations, and then just some internal strategies. Like if we're going to lead our best, we have to be our best. So how do we do that? And then kind of closing with just external strategies. How can we lead in a way where we're going to stay true to our values and really be able to make difficult decisions in difficult times.
So if I'm a teacher in a classroom and I'm trying to do my best right now, but I'm really struggling, what can I think? I always love the metacognition. What can I tell myself and begin to ask myself some questions that would help me to begin to be my personal best?
Yeah.
Questions I could ask myself?
Yeah. So first of all, to know that person is not alone, no matter what you're doing, especially in the realm of education right now, teaching, leading. This has been such a difficult season. We're in the midst of a global pandemic right now. And what we've asked our teachers to do is so challenging, not only to teach the students that they may have in front of them face to face, but also to support those remote learners at home. And then we have this group of students that are going home over this short time. And so I think the place to start is to realize that if you are struggling, that's not a sign that you are not equipped or adequate or any of those things. It is a sign that this is a really challenging season. And so I would first just kind of seek solace in the notion that this is difficult for everyone. And then just to start to think through, like we were chatting right before this started, that I was just coming out of a meeting where we were talking about basketball and like, how do we sell tickets and ensure capacity limits and all of the challenges. And what I mean to say there is that even the simplest of things are difficult now because everything has been made brand new. And so with that, you're going to face failure often. This is a time when we're going to try our very best, but we're going to learn over and over again, okay, that didn't work, I'm going to have to try something new. That didn't work, we're going to have to try something new. And so the more comfortable we can get with that uncomfortableness of being in this midst of failure, and recognizing that we have to be okay with understanding that this is an iterative process, this becoming better and learning how to do things in our new context. That's what is going to take for us to get through this.
I want to read you a quote from your book that was very inspiring to me. And it says, sometimes places like failure, fear, and faith are the very places from which greatness, hope, and success are born. And I think that quote just makes me feel like there's hope for the future, that there might be some real successes that come from all of this.
Yeah. I think we've all seen, that image, super common, right? That talks about the road to success. And on one side, it's like a beautiful straight line. And on the other, it's like a squiggly mess, right? We know this to be true. We know that the path to success is not seamless. It's not straight. But yet somehow we think we're exempt from that. And we aren't. And once we come to terms that success isn't a destination, success isn't an event, and success doesn't just happen, it's what we make of it, right? We make success happen, and it's all throughout the journey. And as we reflect, if we're really honest with ourselves, sometimes that success does come from the least likely of places, in moments where we thought we were not being successful, in moments where we were just gripped with fear. That's when those breakthrough moments can occur.
What you're saying, I think, is that it's all part of the process, right? So it's we're not talking about just this to thrive. So the process in getting there, and not just surviving, but beyond. And then, of course, now in our society, it's much more difficult right now. And I know that you said that the 5% now has shifted a little bit, right? But what is that 5% then? Is it like the procrastination that we do? Is it the things that we kind of avoid because they're uncomfortable, or maybe tedious things? Are those the 5%? Is that what you refer to?
And I think the 5% is going to look different for anyone. But I'll tell you, for me as a school leader, my 5% is the tragedy that happens within the school community. It's when anyone in the system makes a poor choice, young or not so young, or ourselves, and the ramifications that come from that. It's not having the funding that we need to do, or in this moment, knowing that possibly economic challenge or even crisis is looming. it's the weight of knowing that the livelihood of people's, their livelihoods are in your hands. I think all of that is the 5%. And then in this moment of COVID, there's so much that goes with that in terms of trying to decipher the best way, the safest way to keep to have school, but to keep everyone safe. You have students' academic needs and social emotional wellness on one hand, and then you have the physical health of everyone in your system that you're trying to care for. And sometimes those can be conflicting in what might be best to serve those. Those are all really challenging things. And that's my 5% world right now.
So a lot of the factors are from within, but many are outside contributors to this 5%. So how do we go about managing those? A lot of these are outside of our control. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, well, and I think, as leaders, as educators, we have to remember there are certain things that we can change and have influence over, and then there are certain things that we can't. One of the things I've talked about in the book was just that, we get to decide the weight that we give things. There are some things in life that we don't get to choose, right? Matters of life and death and all of those sorts of things. But there's a lot of things coming at us right now in terms of pressure or maybe people who are not happy with how things are going. But we also get to decide what weight we give that. And so to take a step back, have better perspective, put it in the context of life and make a decision of, is this something I need to act on and change? And can I, or is it not? And then what's the impact of that?
I like that. I like putting it into perspective. What can I control? What can I not control? And those things that you cannot control, put it into perspective. And possibly there are some things when you are reflecting that actually kind of prioritize and work through that. That's definitely helpful, especially now because we are just pummeled, right, with different things, and we're not able to focus on the one. So this way, it's really important to kind of prioritize looking at what we can control, what we can't. Mm-hmm. I like it.
I love in the book too some of the tips that you have on thriving. Mm-hmm. I think those are so helpful, and I like the part where you said talk to yourself. Positively and intentfully about when you have self-doubt, and talk to yourself and try to be true and talk about what you do have control over and what can impact you. I know I was having this same discussion with my husband last night. I said, I'm so upset and nervous about this election. And then we started talking, I have no control over it. I need to kind of let that go. I can't do anything about it. I did my part. I voted. Yeah. Now let it go. And so as I read that kind of helped me with that piece. Mm-hmm. But what are some other inward strategies that we can use to get to that, to help us through that difficult 5%?
Yeah. So one of the things, obviously, and again, in this moment, the self-care piece is so important. And we've heard that theme talked about over and over. We need to take care of ourselves, which we absolutely do. But really just have spent a lot of time thinking about balance and what that looks like in our lives. And, funny story, when I got the first rounds of edits back on this book, and I was so excited to read through, what did they like? What do I need to change? And it was encouraging and also very constructive. But they got to the chapter that I put in there about self-care, and they said, Jill, in every chapter you start with these, great stories of trial and triumph. But in this chapter, that is missing. And I just had to laugh this is probably maybe not my strong suit. But one of the things I think I've come to realize is that we do have to kind of reconceptualize this notion of balance. I have this kind of picture in my mind of what that looks like, right? That I wake up and spend some quiet time, just really reading and reflecting and growing. And then I'm out in nature and, having this vigorous workout like yoga. I don't know why yoga is always involved, but it is. And then, I'm going to make breakfast for the kids and have a meaningful discussion with my husband, and we're going to walk to school, and I'm going to have a great day at work and come home and go to the soccer practice and props if I coach that, practice too. And, we're going to play board games and have dinner and then go to bed, blissfully read stories until we fall asleep. And we know that is not accurate. We know that that's not realistic. But I also think then we sometimes put our lives on trial against this vision of something that's not even realistic or achievable. And so part of our issue with self-care is we hear about it all the time. We need to do a better job maintaining, and I'm not giving us an out. But what I am saying is that sometimes we hold ourselves accountable to something that's not even realistic. And so for me, it's looking at my life in just bigger pictures. The goal is not for Monday to be balanced, right? The goal is for my life to have a sense of balance. And so as I look at my week to say, okay, I know that Monday and Thursday and Friday are really busy, but I have nothing on Wednesday after 4:30. And on Tuesday, I do have something and I'm choosing not to go because I know this is a crazy week. Or it's looking at, right now we're in the month of October, which is really, really busy, as is April and May. And then having conversations with my family to say, yeah, it's really busy right now, but also remember that November and December and June and July are like completely barren when it comes to evening events. And so that's a piece of balance. Or that I work a job that's kind of 24/7, 365, except that we also have like 6 weeks built into our schedule that we're off with Christmas and Thanksgiving and spring break. And so it's kind of just reconceptualizing what that looks like and trying to achieve balance in longer term. So that was one of the key things I've talked about.
Yeah, I think that's good. Holding yourself accountable, at the same time, letting yourself off the hook, right? Looking at what is achievable, right? Looking at what's achievable and trying to be realistic. And then when you look at your day or your week, as you said, really look through that and maybe look to the next and see how it could be better. And again, letting yourself off the hook. I think it's so important because there's so many things. And when you started out that day, I thought, okay, yeah, great. And then you realize, yeah, no, this is not achievable, right? That's our the Instagram look, right? That's the Instagram look. And sometimes, again, we hold those things. You hold ourselves accountable. We have these high standards, and it's great to have these lofty goals, but putting into perspective and really making the reality and being happy with that, and reflecting on that. And I think, again, it is about what you mentioned too, Jerry, having metacognition, giving the time for yourself to think through what your goals are, what's realistic, and trying to get a handle on those and being happy. And I think that's all part, maybe, so what you're saying is part of the thriving is just being realistic about it and letting yourself off the hook.
And I think you made a really good point too, especially in today's day and age. We get like the 30-second clip. Like I get your best 30 seconds and everyone I look on social media. Yeah. And when I try to compare my life to it and it doesn't measure up, I all of a sudden feel like I'm not as good as, or as, whatever. And I think that that's just something we need to just be real honest with ourselves in terms of let's hold ourselves accountable, but let's make sure that that's reasonable and appropriate to do so.
Yeah, the 30-second and the filtered clip.
Yes, 100%.
I need to figure out those filters. Hey, and I heard that Zoom is getting filters, so we might be in luck here.
There you go.
On our podcast.
One of your chapters is called the TPW?
Yeah.
What is that?
So TPW is the mantra of our football team. And it stands for Tough People Win. And, sometimes you have slogans that come and go, but this is one that has just emanated across our organization to the point where I was out for ice cream with my daughter one day at one of those frozen yogurt places. And, you get your own cup. And so I'm filling mine and choosing mine. And she's 11, she's doing that. And we get to the checkout stand and I look over and she has this like overflowing, the whipped cream, cookies, gummy bears. It just was massive. And I looked at her and I said, Caitlin, you are going to get sick. And she said, no, Mom. She said, I told my stomach, just TPW, like tough people win. So it's this notion that, for all that I feel like we try to do in the book about giving strategies and, how to lead from vision and inspire hope and to engage in contentious situations, there's also a place that we just have to recognize that part of the work is just putting your head down and toughing it out, right? And so how do we do that? And of course, taking COVID aside, because this is a different kind of context, but in general, sometimes we just have to realize that that that's what's required. Is there are going to be hard days, and we just have to tough it out and realize that we're going to be better for it on the other side.
Right. Perseverance, those character skills. Absolutely.
Jerry had mentioned that there are frameworks as part of your book. How does that structured? How does that work? How does that help the readers? What is the focus on that?
So it was really important to me that this be an engaging read, right? Like I just wanted people, and I love the discussion that we've had around metacognition, because that's where change happens. It's not just about reading, or it's not about learning. It's then about reflecting it back. And I know for myself, as I'm looking at hiring future leaders, one of the number one characteristics that I look for in someone is not experience. It's not knowledge. Is, are they self-aware, and are they reflective? And if you can do both of those things, if we can have a hard discussion and I get a text, 20 minutes later that just says, hey, listen, I've thought about what you said. Here's what I'm thinking about now. Like, that's the key. And so throughout this book, I wanted to build in not just, hopefully, funny stories, hopefully research-based ideas around these things that I'm trying to talk about, hopefully like 5 tips to thrive, like things you can do tomorrow to put things in action. I also wanted a framework for people to have some time and space to sit back and say, okay, how have I seen this work in my life? Let's have some honest thinking time around fear. When was the last time I was really fearful? How did I respond to it? Did I have a situation that was similar that happened again, and was my response different? Asking those sorts of questions. And then, I love seeing just all of the book studies that are forming around this book, because people are having really good conversations around those things. And the framework is the piece that makes that happen.
Wow.
Will we be having like a Twitter chat around the book, or a book study that we can be involved in, or?
Yeah, so I haven't, we've been a little busy with the whole start of school and COVID, and then launching a book at the same time. It's been a little crazy, but I love that idea. I have been popping in on book studies that have been happening with, different school organizations, leadership organizations, in chatting with them in that respect, but I'll have to think about hosting my own.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's not just a book you read and put down, right? The whole point of it, I guess, is that you're making it sort of like a workbook that they are going through, and then they put it down and they think about how it applies to their own life. And you're really embedding that into the book. So that engagement, that reflective component that you are trying to get through in your book is actually part of your book, and asking people to engage in that and be part of your writing, I suppose.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors is Jen Hatmaker, and she just released a book earlier this year, Fierce, Free, and Full of Fire. And she wrote that book about, just how to be fierce and free and full of fire. And if you know anything about Jen Hatmaker's story, they've had a really, really rough go the past couple months. And she picked up her book again and read it. And one of the things that she shared is that these words still hold true. And I remember thinking how powerful that was. And I will say for myself, writing this pre-COVID, when my job was hard, like being a superintendent, being a leader is hard. And writing it at that moment, and then taking it through COVID and picking up those words again, or seeing them on social media as people are sharing them, and thinking to myself, these words still hold true. And that's powerful.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I love the fact that, this almost seems like this was part of your routine for a while. How long did it take you to write the book? It almost sounds like you made it part of your day, part of your reflective day.
So I wish that to be true, but yes and no. So, I, like Jerry had mentioned at the very beginning of the call, or our podcast starting, I've been in my district for 8 years. And I love what I do. I have 1,000 students here, and it's just an incredible place to be. We wouldn't still be here if it wasn't an incredible place to be. But there's also this piece within me that I struggled with for a long time of like, so what is that next step? And of course, people encouraging you like, hey, you need to step out and take a larger district, or, do some of those things. But I love where I'm at, and I love what I'm doing, and I love who I'm doing it with. Yet I still felt this call to do more. Like, we have 5.4 million students across the state of Texas, and there's leaders all across the nation. And I got to this place a year and a half ago where I just realized you don't have to leave where you're at to lead in the way that you are being called to lead. And so I just started really thinking about what that might look like for me. If I want to stay in this district and continue to do the things that I love, are there other ways that I could influence others? And so that started by writing a blog. It started by speaking, in front of groups, and has grown. And one of those just thoughts that was deep, dark, hidden in my heart was just that I want to write a book. And I'm so thankful that I voiced that to a friend who encouraged me right away, and started down that journey. And so I wrote it over the course of about a year. Okay. And then it came out this past September.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I wrote a book years ago, but I had to do it, in the wee hours of the morning because there weren't enough hours of the day. So I really give you a lot of credit doing that while leading school district like that. But I mean, a lot of your references today were educationally based, but it doesn't sound to me that this is only for those in education. This sounds really like something that is going to be geared toward anyone.
Yeah, 100%. It is, even though my context might be education, the things that I'm talking about are so applicable, not just to other leaders in other industries, but to anyone. I mean, it's a book about leadership, but it's a book about life.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And where do we find the book? Jerry has it. How do you get it? How do I get it?
You can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Nobles or any other place that you would buy your favorite books.
All right. I'm on it.
Can we follow you online, or where else can we see you?
Yeah, so on all the social media platforms, I'm at Jill M. Siler. And then, of course, my website is jillmsiler.com.
Wonderful.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited. I really want to dig into this because I just feel like I said before, I think to me, this is going to be a self-care book for me. I don't take enough time to be reflective, and I don't think many people do right now. There are so many different things that we're now having to juggle because of this pandemic. So it really is true that this is so timely, and I think it's going to force me at least, to spend that time to think through my days, think through my weeks, think through how I can actually be thriving. So thank you. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to some of those Twitter chats. So we're banking on that.
Thank you for this great gift. I feel like this is a gift to all people, just to think about thriving and getting through those tough times. So thank you for your knowledge.
Well, great. It's been wonderful to chat with you both this morning.
Yes, we've enjoyed it very much, Jill. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.